Welcome back to Fast Market here on the Schwab Network. It's time for our cash tag segment. For that, let's bring in Andy Swan. He's a co-founder at LikeFolio. Welcome back to the show, Andy.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right, so we're talking about a fun topic. Kevin and I talking off camera here about the new boat that Royal Caribbean has. But this stock last year, along with all the other cruise lines, had a pretty good 2023. Bookings are solid. The things that you do off the boat, they're making some profit margins there. But what kind of data do you guys see on this one? Because it seems like expectations pretty high going into this earnings result.
Yeah, I think that's the big problem heading into this earnings result. I think that the bar is set very high. LikeFolio data is showing some very good things, has been for a while for the entire cruise industry. Royal Caribbean, certainly no exception. We've seen mentions grow at a really strong, consistent pace, for cruising in general, for Royal Caribbean specifically. The problem we have with Royal Caribbean, and the reason why we're not exceptionally bullish on it going into this, is first of all, the stock price has already moved up considerably and is at levels where we think it's overall pretty fairly priced. And the second reason is, Royal Caribbean overall is just it's best of breed in terms of the overall consumer. I think it combines growing demand and consumer happiness the best, but it's really not completely outpacing peers. We see this as a, pardon the pun, a kind of rising tide, literally lifting all boats type of situation. We saw Carnival's earnings report last month was significant improvement in revenue and earnings. We think Royal Caribbean probably follows suit. Everything that we have in terms of web visits, mentions, consumer happiness, all suggests great things are happening at Royal Caribbean. But like you said to lead this off, the expectations are pretty high, and a lot of times that can be just too much to overcome. So heading into this report, we think the company is going to report very good numbers and a good 2024 outlook, but it's unlikely to be so good that it moves the stock even higher post-earnings.
Andy, as you know, there's two kinds of people in this world. You either like cruises or you don't like cruises. And Tom and I were debating. I think Royal Caribbean has, the cruise lines. I think the celebrity cruises, the Silver Seas, are outstanding in terms of a high-end level of cruises. This new boat, the trust to build this boat in the environment we find ourselves shows what it is. The stock up 162%, revenue's up 69%. The new boat, how about this? 7,600 passengers, 2,350 crew on this boat. This is a floating city that it has. But you're right. It hit almost $131 a short time ago. The 5-year high is $135, but the bookings are ahead of 2019 levels. But the question is, the debt, is the balance sheet good enough? And what we're finding ourselves today, Andy, is the good enough?
Yeah, and this earnings season, it seems like a lot of times the good hasn't been good enough. We've seen that several times in several names. But overall, I really like your point about, this is a company that certainly betting on the future, and they're betting big. You can't say Royal Caribbean is being tepid about the future when they're building this enormous ship that is grabbing all the headlines. It looks incredible. I will say the one thing that I've noticed that most people who are anti-cruise have in common is that they've never been on a cruise.
Yes.
I think most people that have been on at least a decent, like a Royal Caribbean, Celebrity Line, or even Norwegian cruise, most people that have done that tend to like it quite a bit and tend to be repeat customers. And I think that's what the company's banking on in building this enormous ship that can take 600 people out at once, is if we give all of these people a really, really great experience, then 7,000 of those 7,600 are going to be booking with us again in the next 2 to 3 years. And so I think Royal Caribbean, absolutely bold in investing in its future. And that's the type of company, quite frankly, that I like to be an investor in, somebody that actually believes in their business and isn't playing defense all the time.
Yeah, I'm going to raise my hand on that one, Andy, because sometimes I bash it a little bit because I've never been on one. But as I mentioned to Kevin,
Tom and Jenny Horn.
I'd like
talking right to them.
I'd like to go on one. I just can't be on this, as Kevin mentioned, this icon of the seas, 7,600 people. No thanks on that one. But when you look at your data, you mentioned that, hey, maybe 3 months ago at the end of October when this stock was falling with the overall market, it might have looked good. But what's your earnings score on this one, Andy?
Yeah, just barely positive. Just that barely positive that makes me say, look, I'm going to leave this to Tom and Kevin to figure out a way to trade this. We don't think that the company is going to disappoint investors, but we also find it difficult to believe that they get seriously over the bar to get a big upside move. So a lot of this play might be in understanding some sort of option spread, something that you guys are so good at in terms of figuring out a way to make money on the decay of that premium over time.
Andy, real quick, do you look at if you look at you got year-over-year change here on this one, up 22%. RCL is up about 16%. When you look at those numbers, have you guys seen any data out of LikeFolio that's saying, hey, the consumer is getting stretched here? Maybe they're not going to book that cruise because a lot of the CEOs over the past couple of quarters continue to say that the consumer remains robust at this point, and they're not pulling back on experiences and travel.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I would actually put the cruise industry in general in kind of that winter category. Something that we've talked about with you guys on the show several times is, the economy for the high end is doing very well, and cruises certainly fit into that equation. There's only a certain segment of the population that's ever available to afford a cruise, especially a Royal Caribbean cruise. I think that what we're seeing at LikeFolio is that segment of the population, which would normally be their customer, is doing quite well, and they aren't really going to be very concerned about the segment of the population that is outside of their normal consumer base. So that's the way we look at it. We see that specific consumer as staying very strong, and have every reason to think that this company will have a positive outlook for 2024.
All right, paying down debt, that's going to be at the top of maybe that conference call. All right, great stuff, great data as always, Andy. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, that's Andy Swan, co-founder at LikeFolio. Kevin, when you look at
expectations for bookings up 29%.
Right, and they're